So that's my prepared spiel. I'd like to open it up to any questions if anybody has any. And I plead for you to have questions because we have to fill another half hour or so. So does anybody have any questions about anything I've talked about, specific, general, or otherwise? Your turn. Go ahead.
What you're talking about is happening all across society. I mean, there's the concern about the corporatization of the media so that we have fewer sources for more objective and different perspectives. I know in the music field, there's the concern that, you know, if you're with the record sales film, and you're not going to have much of a chance. And there are two different things that I've heard about that are kind of interesting. One in the music world is a program called Concerts in the Living Room, where there are artists now that you contact and they have like this association, and they try to hook you up with professional quality musicians that will actually come and perform in your living room for like 20 or 25 people, and you provide them like a base fee, and then you know, have them on top of that. So that's one way to sort of get around this. I don't know how that would apply to cinema, except that
If you're going to feed them, I'm sure filmmakers would love for you to pay to bring them into your living room.
well, it's also the issue of the equipment. I mean, you can show a movie now in just about any spot. You can hook up a player with a digital projector and some kind of sound system. But it's a question of the quality of the experience, obviously. That's the issue too.
And that's an important component of this because cinema can be shown on any wall, on any surface, but unless it's at a certain level of quality of projection, it's exactly what you speak of. I would argue you're missing out on a huge a piece of what it has to offer. I mean, for those of us who grew up watching Star Wars on TV, the first time when it was re-released and you got to watch it in widescreen, it was a revelation of, oh my gosh, look at, I was only seeing a third of the movie. There's literally 2/3 that I was missing this whole time. So your point is very well taken.
And then you had mentioned, touched on a little bit, how much, in terms of media or marketing, Obama's campaign is a perfect example. It's mastered a means to reach people through the internet, through email and all of that. And there are prototypes out there that people are developing to engage people in the cinema, saying, using some of the same techniques or similar techniques.
There absolutely are. A good example of that would be, when I worked at the Chicago Film Festival, I was the director of publicity. I had a nice little office in Chicago that was on top of the Oriental Theater that looked out onto the park on State Street where everybody would have they used to have the skating rink set up before they built the new Millennium Park. And it was just a gorgeous place. I once watched a building burn down from that window, by the way. But right outside my office was the guy who booked all the flights for the filmmakers. His name was Joe Swanberg. He went to Southern Illinois University, which has a pretty good film program, as it turns out. And he one day walked into my office and said, hey, I have a movie that I made with my friends. Would you be willing to watch it? And I watched about 20 minutes of it, and I'm not going to describe all that was in the film, but let me just say this. If you want further description afterwards, I can tell you privately. But it was not the kind of movie you want to see your coworker in. It was not a porn, to be clear, but it was certainly much, much more of him and his girlfriend than I had ever been interested in seeing before. But this film was part of a new movement of films called mumblecore, which were very extremely low-budget films made with non-professional actors, non-professional crew. I think mumblecore, I think the term was used because the sound is often kind of bad and crunchy, and you can only kind of hear what people are saying. And there are often stories revolving around 20-somethings and 30-somethings. And this film, he actually sat down and we talked for a little bit, and he was asking me, what can I do with this film? Do you think that this is going to do, can I do something with this? I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, gosh, I don't know. I don't want to pay to see this. I don't know anybody I know who'd want to pay to see this. But I gave him a couple festivals to look at. South by Southwest, which is known for really grungy independent things that can't even make it into Sundance. Montreal and some of these others. And lo and behold, he did go to those festivals, and his film did show. And his film became this sensation in the independent world. And he became like the indie darling of the year. And I mean, his films are not the kind that are going to be distributed widely, but it was purchased for distribution. And a company paid money to him to distribute it in theaters. And I still am shocked to this day, but this man, who I think he's a great guy, and I think there's room for him, certainly, there's room for everyone in the film industry, but he's somebody who really built his career. It's kind of overlapped a little bit with the traditional models that I've talked about, but he really built his career on do-it-yourself. There's a lot of DIY filmmaking that's happening now. They say, you know what, I don't even want to go the route of distributors. Some of you are saying, screw festivals. We're just going to do cinema. We're going to do it ourselves, and we're going to just bypass all the machine, all the system. And, you know, as we all know in the art world, when you run into people who say that, just screw everything, screw the rules, sometimes you end up with brilliance, but more often than not, you end up with mediocrity. But in his case, he ended up being able to really utilize the internet, utilize things like Facebook and text messaging, and he really built an audience for his film. And it had a lot to do with playing at South by Southwest, which is a perfect festival for that kind of a film. But he went on, and there's been many others like him in the last 3 or 4 years, to say, we're going to just do it our way. And Ballast, the film I spoke about, is an example of that, but there's a lot more of them. And there are people who are, I think, wrongly, but that's my traditional filter standing up here. A lot of filmmakers are saying, I kind of don't care the quality in which you're going to see my film. It used to be filmmakers were just, you have to see it in perfect conditions with the perfect projection, the perfect sound, and if you don't, I don't want you to see it at all. I don't want you to see it. A lot of filmmakers 15, 20 years ago would just freak out if they knew, or with the idea that film festivals like mine view their films on TV, on DVD. No, they would say, you have to see it in a darkened room with an audience, and you have to sit there and have it happen to you. Well, frankly, in that scenario, it's a lot harder to walk off or walk out, and I like to sometimes stop and fast forward, but that's a whole other story. But what this gets to is that there are a lot of circuitous routes that people are starting to take, and I don't think that you're going to see this as the dominant method that people make movies, because ultimately, deep down at their core, people want to make movies that are seen by broad audiences and that are, you know, they want to see money perhaps, they want to get acceptance, they want to have bigger opportunities, and until that circuitous route leads to those resources, I think you're going to see people continue to find the shorter routes. But I think your point is a very good one about leading to DIY.
Yeah. How do places like organizations like Shop, who are they're reinforcing Appalachian film, but distributing film primarily through websites,
Mm-hmm.
And Women Make Movies is another one.
Mm-hmm.
So, how do those sort of fit into the picture of independent film?
Well, that's sort of like film by subscription in a way, and there's a lot of, well, not a lot, but there's quite a few that have popped up. Women Make Movies is a good one you mentioned. There's another one called Film Movement. There's another one called, it's a spiritual film, I don't know what it's called, but it's a spiritual film company. And I think this is really interesting. Their market is even smaller than the specialty distributors. They're basically saying, not only the Hollywood studios not covering it, not only are the specialty divisions not covering it, like television isn't doing it, internet isn't doing it, so we're going to do it. You're going to pay us a monthly fee, and we're going to send you a disc of the hottest new films by women directors that aren't in these other models or these other places. This is a trend that's going to continue. It's been happening for a few years, and I think it's going to continue to happen. I think that it's the equivalent of subscribing to Cat Fancy. Like if you really, really, really want to spend a lot of time like on cats, and you really want to see Appalachian films or films by women or black films or spiritual films, and you're not getting them somewhere else, you're going to subscribe to your Cat Fancy thing, equivalent thing. Until if one of these other models begins to start showing these films, they're going to lose their relevance. But I think that for the time being, nobody is jumping up and clamoring to showcase lots and lots of films by women directors, an area which I think is a tremendous crime, by the way.